A little over 18 months ago, I machined the world's first integral lightsaber. Or at least it's the world's first documented integral lightsaber. Hey son, go away for a few seconds. Excellent. Thank you, son. I will now show what I did for a lot of my childhood. It's time to answer the question, why am I calling this an integral lightsaber hilt? Fortunately, it has nothing to do with calculus. This is an integral because its frame is one solid piece of material. In the case of this hilt, it's made out of 6061 aluminum. These two folding knives made by Reich Knife are what actually inspired me to make an integral lightsaber. Each knife has a single piece frame made out of grade 5 titanium, and they are both such a work of art. I attended Penn State for 4 years, and in my final year, I had a capstone project which introduced me to manual machining. My last semester, I dedicated a lot of my time to make this a reality on manual machines. And lucky us, I recorded a lot of the process. So here we go. Because I had never made an integral lightsaber hilt before, I pretty much had to go with the flow. And you'll see that right off the bat. I picked out the largest piece of aluminum I could find at the Penn State Learning Factory. And once it got onto the lathe, you'll see that right away its diameter got reduced by a lot.
I'm allowed to do that, yeah.
Many of the operations done onto this hilt were either shown to me or done for me by my good friend Steve White. Steve is the manager at the Penn State Learning Factory, and my oh my, he pretty much taught me how to manually turn metal, and we are lifelong friends now. Thank you, Steve. Once the diameter of the aluminum was sufficiently reduced, it was time to start cutting away more material to shape the lightsaber how I visioned it to be. And from the start, I knew I wanted a rather large emitter. The emitter is this top part where the blade ignites from. And I also knew I wanted a slender forward grip. This is the forward grip. And by making it slender, you're really able to hold on to the lightsaber nice and tight. Once the emitter had a nice clean diameter that I was happy with, it then got knurled. Knurling is this really cool diamond pattern that gets generated by these two wheels that crush lines into the surface of the metal. For this entire lightsaber, when it came time to cut metal, I really just went with how I felt. And after being on the lathe a little while, I moved over to a Bridgeport knee mill. And on the knee mill, I milled flats where the knurled section is, and I also drilled holes that are needed for the blade retention screws. After having some fun milling features onto the emitter, it was time to go back to the lathe. And on the lathe, I started machining the rear grip. The finished lightsaber has this nice leather wrap for the rear grip, but it wasn't always like that. In fact, when this was still on the lathe being machined, I thought it'd be nice to have symmetrically spaced rings for the rear grip. So that's exactly what I did. I machined equally spaced rings, and it was super therapeutic. I mean, I methodically removed a little bit of aluminum at a time, and I revealed these rings onto the hilt, and it was a great time. But then eventually, the next weekend, I covered all of it in leather. And I don't regret that decision. I really like the leather wrap. After machining the rear grip, it was time to then start machining the pommel. The pommel is the bottom part of the hilt. And at the time, I just used the tool's geometry to cut interesting shapes into the hilt. and eventually, later on in the project, I finished the pommel. Once the outside of the hilt looked roughly how I wanted it to appear, it was then time to figure out where the button from the electronic kit should go. And when I determined it should be right here, that meant a 1-inch diameter hole 10 inches deep had to be bored into the hilt. And let's just say I should have done that operation first. I had no idea that drilling a 1-inch diameter hole 10 inches deep was going to be a huge hassle. And I mean, I did it. What I had to do is I had to make a drill bit extender for one of the Learning Factory's drill bits. And that was an immense joy, not really. But I learned a lot, and that was my first time actually turning steel. Whoa! And once that drill bit extender was made, I was able to achieve 10 inches of depth into the hilt. And that depth enabled the electronic kit to go exactly where I wanted it to be. After using the drill bits and the biggest drill bit on the drill bit extender, I also used a boring bar to open up the inner diameter from 1 inch to about 1 inch and 10 thou. And that allows for extra clearance, which enables the electronic kit to come in and out of the hilt with ease. The electronic kit alongside with the polycarbonate LED blade I purchased from a company called Art Sabers. And when I saw they had a DIY lightsaber kit, I just had to get it. Once I determined where the button should be on the lightsaber, I brought it back over to the knee mill, and I milled a hole for the button, a slot for the charge port, and with the countersink, I cleaned up the area and added this angled portion right above the button. And this angled portion really allows your thumb to just slide down in where the button is so you can press it with ease. 180 degrees offset from the button and charge port is this small screw, and this screw keeps the electronic kit inside the hilt. And as the screw is being tightened, it raises the button and charge port into the milled features on the hilt. One of the times where I was machining on a Bridgeport knee mill, a certain lady came over and asked, "What are you doing?" So I showed her. "I'm making a lightsaber." And she thought that was awesome. Her name is Meg. She was a teaching assistant at the Penn State Learning Factory. And the other day, we just celebrated 18 months of dating. Meg all around is an absolutely beautiful person. And a few months ago, she graduated from Penn State herself. And before she graduated, she made her own integral lightsaber. If you enjoy making things and or like the DIY genre, please subscribe to the 2 Carrots YouTube channel, because that is what the channel is all about, making things and doing things yourself. Holes were milled above the pommel, and these holes allow the sound waves to come out of the hilt when the electronic kit speaker is making noise. You might be wondering, why did you use such pronounced screws up at the emitter instead of using more discreet set screws? The answer is, I wanted this lightsaber to be an homage to my capstone project. And since I had leftover hex cap screws from my capstone, I used them for the blade retention screws and the screw to hold in the belt wheel. Did I say screw enough? Also, my next lightsaber build uses set screws. Don't worry. The belt wheel was a fun part to make. It's pretty much a small aluminum cylinder with a groove turned on its outer diameter, and through the middle there's a hole bored, and it also has a counter bore so the hex cap screw can be recessed inside the belt wheel. Once the belt wheel was made, it was then time to get the belt wheel into the hilt frame. I brought the hilt over to a knee mill, and with a 3/4 inch wide end mill, I milled a square bottom hole into the pommel. I then drilled a hole at the bottom of that hole and tapped it with a 1032 size tap. That enabled me to fasten the belt wheel into the hilt frame with one of the hex cap screws left over from my capstone project. The belt wheel can really go into many different attachments for a belt. What I have is just a simple 3D printed part, and this part allows the wheel to go inside a groove, and when in the groove, it stays unless I flip upside down. Then it would come out. The addition of the belt wheel allows you to climb large trees while also having the lightsaber on your person. Ta-da! When it came time to finish the pommel, I reflected on childhood and remembered how much I enjoyed eating Honey Nut Cheerios. So I put the lightsaber back on the lathe and I made the pommel look like the top of a honey wand. It's definitely interesting, I could say that at least. Right after turning the final shape for the pommel, I brought the lightsaber over to a vertical bandsaw and I cut off the excess aluminum puck. I then brought the lightsaber over to a buffing wheel where I buffed out those rough cut lines, and as a result, the end of the pommel is slightly rounded. In order to give the lightsaber some age, I got my hands on some aluminum black, and with the aluminum black, I mostly stained the emitter and the pommel, and with the help of a buffing wheel, I buffed out a lot of that stain, and as a result, I got what I believe to be an older looking lightsaber than what it looked like before the stain. When the lightsaber was almost complete, I thought to myself, that emitter is a little too wide for my taste. So I put the lightsaber back in the lathe and I turned down that diameter. And once I had a nice clean surface, it got re-knurled. And after the knurling, I brought the lightsaber to the Bridgeport knee mill and I milled the flats. And after milling the flats, I thought, what if I also milled slots, and in the slots, I can glue brass. So that's exactly what I did. I milled slots and I glued brass in those slots. The electronic kit for this lightsaber has all the colors you would ever want and many sound fonts. Ooh, green. When I completed this aluminum integral lightsaber, I knew what had to come next. So I did it. Introducing the world's first stainless steel integral lightsaber. Apologies about the wind. If you would like to see a video for the stainless steel integral lightsaber, click like. Also, comment below titanium button to let me know you made it in the video this far. Thanks for watching. My name is Robert, and I like lightsabers.